Hey everybody, welcome back to Nikki T Live. I'm your host Nick Taylor, and today I'm joined by not one but two wonderful guests. Today I'm hanging out with one of my old colleagues from Netlify, Kaelig Delumeau-Prigent, and Drew Powers. Hey, how are both of you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's Monday. I'm full of pep. I feel like a 1960s grandfather saying that, but worked out this morning and I'm still feeling pretty fired up. And I got a bit of caffeine in me, so I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Also, we'll be needing a lot of caffeine because my youngest daughter is having an ear infection, and so the past few nights have been very rough. But we'll make it through this
Oh,
this stream, I'm sure.
yeah, I hear you. My kids swim, and you'll end up eventually getting an ear infection there too. And over the counter stuff is okay, but in some cases you do need the behind the counter goods. So and they're not always really up to giving it unless you have very good reason. So you basically have to explain, yeah, my child's ear is about to explode. You have to give some liberties, I think. So anyways, I digress. Oh man. Cool, cool. So before we get into things, for folks who might not know who you are, Kaelig, and we'll get to you after, Drew, can you just say a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm a front end developer at Netlify, and when I don't help make the web better over there, I'm also the founder and co-chair of the Design Tokens community group under the W3C umbrella. So we're going to get a little bit more into what the design tokens are, but essentially what this community group is a group of experts in the design token design system field, and we're building a specification to help distribute design decisions at scale across platforms. And this is what this episode is going to be all about. So I'm excited to actually use the specification myself because I don't get to
Okay.
do that much. I help people set it up, but not use it myself much. So this is going to be great.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And quick check, is it it's the design tokens community group from the W3C, but there's also a designtokens.org. Is that affiliated? Uh,
Yeah,
or that's
we
set.
created that website
Okay,
to
cool.
kind of link
I'll drop
people
that
to
in the
it,
chat.
etc. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. And how about yourself, Drew? I know you're definitely interested in these tools as well. But before we get into the tools themselves, mind saying a bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm a front end developer out of Denver, Colorado. I've worked on some open source projects that some people have been familiar with, Astro, before that, Snowpack, a few others. And
Okay.
my open source time lately has been with the design tokens format module, the W3C group. So have been playing around with that and am starting to get involved with like contributing, giving feedback, partially through the invitation of Kaelig, which is why I'm here today.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, we're going to be digging into the two major mine is in quotes the uh, tools to be dealing with the design token format module. Style dictionary, which is what most people use, and then a beta very early stage open source tool that I've been working on, Cobalt.
Okay, cool, cool. And yeah, I didn't realize you worked on Astro, and I remember Snowpack with Fred and I guess yourself. I didn't realize you're part of
Mhm.
that project. That was like, I remember that was the whole like bundling with ESM and like just don't worry about having a node modules, and it was a very what's the word? A very potentially impactful project, which kind of ended up just turning into Astro and some other things. I think is that kind of what the flow was there, or because I know
Yeah, kind
Snowpack is still around, but it's not really a thing so much now. Is that right? Or
Yeah, we I forget if it was officially or unofficially, but we pretty much unofficially archived it and said, please use Vite. Actually, a lot of Vite
okay,
zero used Snowpack in the first ever
okay,
Vite conf. Evan talked about Snowpack and the work that kind of you know led to Vite's success. Snowpack
hmm,
was
a cool experiment on yeah, like you said, unbundling. Like the whole name was a play on like no pack,
Yeah.
snowpack. So it was an attempt to see, could we make the web simpler, and could we lean into browsers that support all this native stuff that we had been shuffling through these bundlers and really complex build systems? Could we just use the platform more?
Yeah.
So that was a fun experiment. It worked really well, but we kind of determined that it was not. It was good for simple use cases, but for a lot of advanced use cases, you do need some kind of bundling. It's just not practical, at least not without. There's some really cool specifications that are still kind of floating up in the air from TC39. If those land, maybe we'll come back to Snowpack and maybe it'll be viable. But that's kind of the state
Yeah.
of things even today in 2023. Is either some new specifications to how JavaScript works in the browser land, and we can revisit it, or today, for all intents and purposes, Veet's fantastic. It builds on all the great work Snowpack did, and
Yeah.
then some, and it's much more mature now. So Veet is such a fantastic blend of Veet uses the browser as much as possible. Veet is very standards focused. So
Hmm.
Veet still leans into that, using as much as possible, and then it just kind of fills in the gaps for what browsers don't support. And using Veet out of the box, zero config, you'll get about like you'll get a faster site than you probably are working with right now if you're not using Veet. And with
Yeah.
config, you
Yeah.
can get it about as good as it can go.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to talk about all that another time, but I know we want to get to other things. I used to work on the frameworks team at Netlify, so this is pretty interesting to me. So, but
Yeah,
I want
yeah,
to
I'd be
try and
happy
stay
to
focused.
another time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Cool, cool. So, I don't know if I sent a link to that Excalibur. Are you able to type in it, Kaelig? It's not on the screen right now, but or both of you,
Let
can you
me have
type?
a look.
Okay, cool.
I think so. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
okay,
cool.
yeah, I
Okay.
see it.
I
All
can
right.
draw boxes and everything.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, I'm gonna switch us over to pairing view, or I don't know what you call a three a three pairing, a threaring. I don't know. Anyways,
Nailed it.
my icon's a little pair on my little dashboard here. Okay, so we're gonna come into Excalibur, and before we start doing that, so we've got these tools for design tokens. We've talked briefly about this community group, part of the W3C standards. But before we get into all of that, because I know people that check out the stream, they have various levels of experience. So let's like pull it all the way back and just like, what the heck is a design token? Let's go. Let's start there.
Yeah, maybe I can take that one. So let's start with a very simple example. Let's say you've got a component library, and in that component library, let's see. Let me disable Grammarly for a second. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, so uh, so let's say you've got a button.
yeah.
And then that button has a background color. Let's go for blue. And then the stroke is going to be this blue as well. So if I if you've got a component library with all of these UI elements, you can kind of break this down. Every single what some people call atom in atomic web design,
Mm-hmm.
but you can take every single part of this design and kind of say, okay, let's start with the text. So the text is going to be a font size. Hang on, let me properly disable Grammarly because it's literally on top of everything here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm looking at this button. I've got a font size. The text also has a text color. Then probably a font weight. And
Mm-hmm.
then you can go all the way to border. So the border has a width. Um, then it's going to have this corner. uh, there's a border radius. There's probably going to be a border style, a border color. There's quite a few things going on here, and then of course the background. So let's
Yeah.
stop there. There.
Okay.
Okay. So all of these things are design decisions that if you start multiplying by, so this is just the default state of the button, but all of a sudden you've got hover, you've got focus, you've got touched, active, etc.
Yeah.
You might also have a danger button that looks a bit more like this. And then you've got a success button. Success button looks a bit more like this. So, and all of these also have different states, etc. And so,
Yeah.
how do we get all of these design decisions, and how do we get them to not only work in code but also work in our design tools? And when I was talking about code, it might be for web, but also
Hmm.
for your Android app, for your iOS app, for your VR app, for and you can go pretty far in the number of platforms. If you're
Yeah.
Spotify, for example, your stuff has to run on freaking fridge doors. So your design language has to scale on between uh, digital touch screens that could be in a car, on a,
Okay.
like I said, on a fridge, iPad, iOS, whatever, all the platforms. So you start having quite a few of these design decisions, and then they need to go back to brand guidelines. So
Yeah.
um, one thing we can do here is to take those subatomic values or properties and start
Hmm.
calling them certain names. So, for example, let's say I want to make sure that all of my buttons, I want to make sure that they're all named the same and they all refer to the same value across all platforms. So, I'm going to name this button background, and maybe I'm going to call it button default background. And don't use that naming convention. This is just for this example, but
Oh yeah, yeah, no
um,
worries. It's a live stream, so don't worry about
right.
it.
And then what is that default background going to be? So I could do a hex directly, a hex value. Oh, I don't know what this could be, but anyway, this imagine this is a hex value here.
Okay.
Or I could tie it back to my brand. So what if this hex value was encoded as another name, which is brand blue?
Okay.
And then you can go even further and say, what if we had another name that is, you know what? Brand blue is one thing, but we're going to introduce another step in the middle.
Okay.
And we're going to say this is brand or action primary. So you can have all of these relationships mapped out. We're kind of turning all of our design decisions into a big database of uh, relationships
Okay.
between all of these. You don't have to go that complex at Netlify. I think we have one or two levels of complexity here, but you can see where this is going. And
Hmm.
what if we want to share all of these design decisions, like I said, across various platforms and design tools? Um, well, what if there was a format for that? And what if we used JSON to represent all of these design decisions and break them down into key value pairs? And I mean, we'll get a bit more into this, but before I go a bit deeper, do you have any questions on on this?
Yeah, no, I think this makes sense to me. This is from the architectural standpoint for the design. It's not, to be clear, these aren't necessarily like CSS variables or properties. These are they would probably be consumed as a CSS property, but this is more like higher level than that, or
Yeah,
lower
so right
level,
now we're
sorry.
just talking about the language. Yeah, exactly. So here
Y-
I was talking about codifying these design decisions. Um, but obviously, if we encode them in a database format or in a JSON file, your CSS cannot use it out of the box because it's JSON.
Yeah,
So unless you use some post CSS, there are ways to consume JSON in CSS, but the platform by
yeah,
default doesn't allow you to do so. So what you end up needing is you want to take that database and you want to spit it out into files that are consumable by iOS, by Android, by CSS, etc., etc., etc. And this is
okay,
where
gotcha.
tools like uh, like Cobalt and Style Dictionary and Theo and a few others that are out there come into play, and essentially help us take all of the design decisions and distribute them across all of these other platforms.
Cool, cool. Gotcha.
And so we end up with this single source of truth of all designed decisions. You can end up with multiple sources of truth. You can distribute some of these, but essentially, what you're trying to do here is that you have these brand colors. You probably want them to be stored in one place.
Yeah.
Instead of people, copy pasting various blues here and there across your code base, you probably want to have this single source of truth. And then you guarantee that your brand guidelines are followed through this giant mapping, which can be giant. Like if you're in Adobe and you have I don't know, dozens of products, you can end up
Yeah.
with hundreds of thousands of tokens. Most people end up with just a few dozens. But yeah, this is kind of the practical explanation and technical
Hmm.
explanation of what a design token is, without getting too deep into what this unlocks from an organizational perspective and why this is good for engineering and design collaboration. But if we want, we can go there as well. But this is a fairly technical stream, so I wanted to go more into the practical, technical side of it.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And I think that that's a great explanation. We want to keep things in general with anything, especially a brand, you definitely want to keep things uniform. So this makes complete sense. And like you were saying, you're not doing some copy pasta. So like if one of the design team updates well, maybe brand colors don't change that often, but something else, that would just propagate to everything that consumes it without like, you know, the next time maybe the developer deploys the site, it just pulls in some new colors. They didn't actually have to change anything because they're respecting the token format.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then you end up with let's go for just a normal thing. So imagine this is your JSON file
Hmm.
with all of these values encoded. Um, maybe, or let's call it brand.json. Imagine you've got this JSON file with all the brand blue and brand green and all these things, and brand gold.
Yeah.
And then you want to distribute it, like I was saying. So you probably want to have a CSS version of it, um, an XML version of it for Android, and then an Objective C version of it. What is it again?
I can't remember. I've only
For
started
iOS,
recently
it
messing
might just
around
be
with
a
iOS.
maybe you want a TS file as well. And so let me just draw some arrows here. And so the way to perform this transform,
Hmm.
put these away, is that you're going to take. I can't
Yeah.
command Z. Okay. Okay. There we go. So you're going to take all of these transforms, and this is where Cobalt comes into play. So, oh, can't write. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
This is where Cobalt comes into play. Cobalt is going to take that JSON um, and then spit out all of these formats for us.
Okay.
And then obviously, once you've got all of these files, you can distribute them through NPM, for example, or pip, or Cocoa pods and such. And then all of your apps can consume those values,
Okay.
knowing that they all fall back um, to the original source of truth. That's
Yeah. Okay.
that's that's the gist of that's the gist of it. And now, if you know that, you know what design tokens are, and what design token
Okay.
tooling is. And
Yeah, no, that is a great explanation. And obviously, you put Cobalt in there, but I know we want to talk about Style Dictionary as well. Is
Mhm.
is this a good point to maybe talk about, I guess, well, we kind of know what these tools do now based on what you just explained. But do you want to maybe dig into the differences between these tools, or where do you want to start in terms of the tooling, or we can just start diving into VS
Well,
Code if you want.
I'll give the mic to Drew in a second. What's interesting here is why Cobalt and it exists, and I'll let Drew talk about this. But before Cobalt, there's other tools like Theo and Style Dictionary, which are
Hmm.
have their own way of encoding colors. So if you look at brand.json here, what is the structure of this? It hasn't been decided by a standards body or a group of experts. It was decided by the authors of these. So Theo from Salesforce and Style Dictionary from Danny and team at Amazon. And so
Okay.
those emerged through the tools. And what Cobalt is doing is that it's using the new design tokens W3C community group format um,
Okay.
that is you could call brand.tokens.json, which is a specification decided by a whole community. And so,
Okay.
um, Drew, tell us more about this, maybe.
Yeah, no, that was a great summary. Yeah,
But
just plus one to
before,
everything Kaelig said. And yeah,
before you
like
get
the
started, Drew, can I
yeah.
just say one thing? I'm loving your sweater. It's awesome. Sorry, just had to
Oh,
call
thank
that
you.
out before you got into the deep thought. So just shout out to the
Getting
sweater.
yeah, getting festive.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, this sweater probably disqualifies me to talk about design at all, but because this is the ugliest thing ever. But I don't care. I love it. Yeah. So Cobalt is yeah, timeline's important. So I forget the exact year. I think it was 2014 ish. Like Salesforce's design team talks about problems that they were having, and everything Kaelig mentioned, multi-platform design, keeping things consistent. It's things that we had done since the beginning of the web is like copy hex values, but like it was such a
Yeah.
manual process, and there you would just end up with across teams and organizations and sub teams, and you just end up with all these disparate disjointed things where I think Facebook's, this is old, like Facebook's famous, like we had like 200 blues in our platform story or something like that. I forget what the
Yeah.
number
Yeah.
was, but um, so 2014, Salesforce codified the term design token. If I'm remembering that correctly, there's a whole talk on it, and just kind of called out, hey, this one thing we've all been doing, like let's pay really close attention to this, and let's give this a
Okay.
name, and let's actually pay attention to this practice and how much time we're sinking into this. And yeah, that kind of started the timeline progression of I don't know the year that Style Dictionary came out, but Style
Okay.
Dictionary came out. It was basically like, the predominant tool up until the W3C community group format, which borrowed heavily from like the trailblazing that Style Dictionary set forth, and there was a lot of
Hmm.
good practice, and there was still to Kaelig's point, not as much of like community input or like years of putting it into practice. People kick the tires. People learn what was good about it, what was frustrating, what there were still problems to solve, and so that's the W3C community group stepping in
Okay.
and saying, what, like let's try and like improve this and like take the next step forward. What if tokens had more of a universal format, and then
Hmm.
every design team at every org isn't resolving the same problem over and over again. We can actually share knowledge. We can reduce our own workload. We can learn and borrow ideas from each other. Um, and that's been going on for 3-ish years now, give or take. Is that right, Kaelig? Um,
Yep, that's right. Exactly. Yeah.
okay. And so it was something that I had stumbled upon at I was at Sneak at the time working on the design team. Was a design
Okay.
engineer, and we were overhauling our internal design tooling and just kind of took a look at the spec and thought, hey, this seems like a cool idea, and we could use Style Dictionary, or we could use this experimental new thing. And oh my gosh, there's like people from Adobe and Figma and Google and Salesforce and you name it, like Netlify, like all these people are contributing and like sharing ideas. Like this seems like a really good thing to lean into, but there just wasn't any existing tooling yet. So Cobalt was
Okay.
kind of like a crack at it, and I took some of the work that I had done on like bundling and developer tool systems and applied kind of the same methodology of like just trying to reduce the work from style dictionary.
Okay.
So I still don't really have a lot of large org level experience of like I haven't really managed a huge style dictionary system. So that's why I'm going to lean in on Kaelig and his experience with style dictionary to see what it
Okay.
does really well, and just see how it compares to Cobalt. And um, the idea is to reduce work and to have less. In style dictionary, you have these like transformers, which we'll get into, which can be a lot
Okay.
of code of how you go from that JSON to all those output files. And Cobalt is just an attempt to reduce the amount of work, in that like kind of gray
Okay.
middle area. Um, you know, but we'll
Okay.
see how effective it is, and we're always trying to iterate and always trying to make that simpler for people. The idea is just more plug and
Cool.
play. You know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the cool thing too about new tooling coming out, and like I can draw parallels to like the bundling. Well, like we were mentioning Snowpack before, but like I remember using Browserify, Webpack, and like even before that, just obfuscating with some weird tool I had, and you know uh, I always find it weird how people kind of knock older tooling because like the new tooling just wouldn't exist without the older tooling from the learnings from those. So I'm not saying that either of you are knocking style dictionary. That's what I mean. But I just mean, I think it's great that, another tool comes out and they have new learnings or they can improve upon things in it. It doesn't mean that the other one disappears necessarily. The other tool might actually benefit from the new discoveries this other tool had. So it's all in all, it's just a good thing, I think, to have that kind of competitiveness to just make everything better. So so that sounds pretty cool. So like in terms of Cobalt, it's like you said, it's still experimental right now? Like or
Yeah, it's a V1, but even as the design token community, the design token format module is still kind of in the works. It As far as I know, it supports the current working version, but there's always
okay.
discussions happening. There's always that's still very much a like not set in stone sort
Okay,
of thing.
gotcha. Okay. And in terms of style dictionary, because I have not used either of these tools ever. I've been higher up the food chain in terms of consuming these things. Um, so style dictionary right now, it's a little less plug and play-ish. It's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not necessarily using the new standards from the W3C. Is that correct? Or are they looking to integrate that? Or
Yeah, Kaylee, I think you'd know better than I would.
Yeah, so Style Dictionary is awesome. It's such a great tool. It is pretty plug and play. Like you can get started with a JSON file, a few colors, and boom, you've got you can get started pretty quickly.
okay,
Um, the developer experience is really good. The That said, because they have such a huge community, one of their priorities is ecosystem stability. And so
okay.
they can't willy nilly change the format based on the new specification because
Hmm.
the specification itself is in the works. And so it would be very premature for a well adopted toolkit to jump on the latest and most bleeding edge. So
Okay, yeah.
they
Makes sense.
optimize for great developer experience, stability, and right now they're revamping the code base to make it fully TypeScript
Okay.
to run more easily in the browser with no file system. So it can run as a plugin in your browser or in Figma or deployed at the edge, those kind of things. So
Okay.
there's a lot of activity going on right now, and the main creator of Style Dictionary, Danny Banks, is actually one of the contributors to the. He's one of the main contributors to the design tokens format module, and I can share what the format module looks like real quick.
Yeah, sure. You can share it in
So,
the chat where we are, or if you're in Twitch, feel free to drop it there. If not,
oh, can I share my screen or no? It doesn't work.
oh yeah, yeah. No, yeah, you can go ahead and share it, and then I'll just I'll switch us over
The
to the guest
buttons
share.
don't seem to work very well for me, so I think maybe
Oh,
it's not working.
interesting.
Is it working? Here, can you see this?
Hold on a sec. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see your screen. It's got Inception going on, I think. Uh,
Oh,
oh wait, no, it didn't share it. If you click the little monitor down below, is it not working?
I was. I've been trying to.
That's so weird. It was working when we tested it
It's
though.
okay.
But
I'll just send you the URL.
okay, I can share it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can just drop it
Cool. Here we
here.
go.
Okay, format. Okay, cool. All right. That is pretty weird.
This
That's
is
not
very
working.
professional streaming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's uh the thing with live streaming is things never go perfect, like which is kind of one of the reasons why I actually like it. I don't have the bandwidth to basically put in a ton of time doing a YouTube video that's, super
No,
perfect.
totally.
So,
Yeah.
okay,
No,
cool.
this is
So
great.
here's the format.
Okay, so at the top you can see the people who are working on specifically on this part of the format. So we've got Danny Banks, that's the main author of Style Dictionary. He works at Amazon. He's awesome. Danny, if you're watching, love you. We've got Donna Vitan, who's a designer out of Canada, not far from you, Nick.
Oh, okay.
Um, I think she might be based in Toronto, actually. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Then we've
Yeah,
got
not too
James
far away.
Nash, who himself worked on on his own specification prior, like a few years ago. And we've got Kevin Powell, who's one of the renowned design tokens and design systems experts of this world, who's done a ton of consulting with many big customers out there. So he knows about
Yeah.
this. And then we've got Louis, who's based out of France, and he works on a tool suite, a
Okay.
SaaS platform that is based on how to distribute your design tokens, etc. It's called Specify. Little shout
Oh,
out
cool,
to
cool.
those folks.
Nice.
And
Quick question. Is
yep,
the Kevin Powell there the one that I know from
nope,
YouTube doing all this? Okay, okay.
different one.
Just thought I'd
Yeah.
ask.
um, so um, if you go down a little bit, section 5, and on the sidebar.
Okay.
So this is basically what a design token looks like. So yeah, keep going to
Okay, yeah.
section 5. Yeah. Name and value. That's it. So
Yeah.
essentially, we're trying to encode here is key value pairs. And so the format is aiming at defining what the structure of the JSON, what is the schema that we're going to distribute across platforms and design tools. And then on the right-hand side of each key, there's a value and what kind of values are accepted, and then how to kind of type those. It's not really a fully typed system, but we're
Okay.
trying to. So it's not strict typing, is what I'm trying to say. There are some things around it because yeah. Anyway, so we rely on tools such as Cobalt at the moment, but later on, Style Dictionary will support this when this is more stable.
Okay.
To do all of the parsing and all of the transforming and all of the outputting. And so you can imagine that this token name here would be transformed into, if you wanted to transform this to CSS, it would look like dash dash token name colon FFF000. That's
Okay, yeah.
what your CSS output would be.
Okay, for your CSS property. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's yeah, so I mean, I guess the transformers are what convert it to the different formats, I'm assuming. Is that under the hood, like, is that using ASTs to transformers, or is it doing something less AST-ish, just out of curiosity? Or
Drew, I'll let you answer that because I worked on a tool, but it was like years ago.
okay,
Yeah. In yeah, I mean, yeah, the a lot of the patterns are very AST-ish. I don't know if it's like a
okay,
true AST because the format is designed to be really simple. But yeah,
Hmm.
that's the general
Okay.
idea. Um, and I actually don't know the internals of Style Dictionary too well. But as we'll get into later, there's like a you can see there's like a little dollar sign prefix
Hmm.
on like type, dollar sign on value. The reason for that is it's showing a top level token, but like Kaelig pointed out in his example, you can actually group infinitely. So there's no like you can have something that's like 20 levels deep of like
Oh,
color,
okay.
base, brand, default, or like color, base, brand, disabled, or there's different hierarchies you can follow, and it's up to you whether what
Okay.
your entire tree structure looks like. So it can be as flat or as deeply nested as you want. um,
Okay.
and the little dollar sign is kind of like a special, because you can nest and structure your JSON in any way you want. The dollar sign is kind of like a stop. It's just like, okay, now this is an actual token, like as you can see with
Okay.
like the dollar sign prefix, or this is a reserved word in the structure. And up until then, you can basically almost use like any character that you want,
Okay.
you know and you'll
Yeah.
refer to tokens by the full path separated by dots, like color dot brand dot default dot blue.
Okay.
Um, so that way it mirrors your JSON structure. And in Cobalt, the JSON itself can be really tricky to parse, which is also why Cobalt as a tool is trying to simplify that. Because like
Okay.
you said, you would have to deal with like, well, how deep is my tree, and how do I traverse it, and what level am I at? And you also we'll get into aliasing that Kaelig pointed out, but like in a JSON, like this points to that value. That value doesn't have to have a value. That can point to another value. That can point to another value. That can
Oh,
point to
okay.
another value.
So it can get pretty
And
hairy.
yeah. And then you
Okay.
got to watch out for recursion and stuff like that. So what Cobalt does is it scans that entire structure and resolves everything. And then uh, there are some pre-built plugins for some common outputs like CSS, TypeScript, JavaScript, JSON. But the idea is to make it easy for you to write your own plugin of, I have my special language that I want to write. And so what Cobalt will give you back is just a single, like a flat array of like, here's all of your tokens. And then here's all
Okay.
the values that have already resolved. And we've already thrown errors if the syntax is wrong, or if, we were expecting a color and then we got a border, we'll throw an error
Okay.
like, hey, this isn't right. This isn't the right token type. Um,
Okay. Gotcha.
and then
And
from
to
the plugin, you have an array of token values that are easier to work with. And so you can choose how to build your files from there. That it's just like a lot of the work is just done for you.
okay. And in terms of the token name, like we're looking here at there's no hierarchy. It's just the token name. But say there was a deep hierarchy. I don't know. Let's say just 5 levels deep. Does that mean the token name that will be associated to the value becomes, for example, like brand dot color dot border dot until it hits the actual dollar value? Is that is
Hmm.
okay, so it also constructs the name, the tree hierarchy. Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
okay.
called a group. So it's like you could have like a top level token that's just like border, and that can be a token, right? Or you can have, border dot base dot default, It's the
Okay.
structure is up to you.
Yeah, and like you were saying about the aliases, like say you had a top level border, but then I don't know, you were somewhere else, you could maybe the top level doesn't make sense because that's probably the default, but like somewhere else you could alias that border value and that could become the border value from some other token and so on. And yeah, okay.
Yeah, and there it gets to I don't have like a good link off the top of my head, but there's different strategies for naming tokens. And some people will talk about layers.
Okay.
Like I think I've even heard the term like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, just to refer to how you can kind of think about organizing your code and your design system. So layer 1 is the raw values, and a lot of design systems have what we call color ramps, which is like, okay, it's not just one blue. There's like 15 blues, that go from like really
Okay.
dark to really light, and they'll usually be like blue 100, blue 200, blue 300, yada yada. And so those are considered layer 1, where those are the raw values, but they don't really have meaning as to how they're used. And
Okay.
then layer 2 is more the semantic, where for like links or color action, or or this represents an error. Like this has a semantic meaning in the interface, and error is
Hmm.
referring back to red. But it's like maybe we also, I don't know, maybe error is like an orange, like in our design system.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have to be a one-to-one mapping, and we might want to play around with that a little bit. And then layer 3 is more of like an optional layer, which is a component, and it's a little controversial because some design systems have a hard no, tokens are not associated with components. We handle that in a different system. Um,
Okay.
or some people are like, no, this is super helpful for us. We love saying border background maps to color action, blah blah blah. But all those different decisions and what the layers are and what the semantic names are. And again, this predates design tokens. There's always been discussions of like, what do you call CSS classes, and trying to
Yeah.
force semantics on every level. So it's kind of the same discussion, right? But it's just, it affects how the JSON, that mega JSON file is organized, and what the groups are named.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like Bam or whatever the flavor of the butt is, but like, yeah,
Hmm.
totally. Because like these things, like I don't want the word. I don't want to use the word simple, but say you build out a small project, it doesn't really need to scale. But these kinds of things we're talking about really matter when you're like it's gonna become a large project, or like you said, it crosses the brand, spans multiple devices, multiple media formats too. Maybe like I don't know if people still do. Well, people still do print, I guess. I don't know if that applies to this, um, but yeah. So
Hmm.
like this is something. It's not like we created a tool just to make our lives more complicated. It's like the complete opposite. We made tools like this to make our lives simpler in the long run. Like
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's fighting with problems that as front developers we've all had to deal with. Like the classic, like what is this text color? Oh, this
yeah,
is gray light. Okay, add dark mode. Oh no, everything in my code base is all gray light. And when we invert it, now it's the same color as the background.
yeah,
So
yeah,
then you abstract at one level. It's like, what is this? This is the text color, and we've set that. And when we have light mode, text color is this, and dark mode, text color is that. And so it's
yeah,
it's taking the same problems we've had to wrestle with, for years, and then it's just trying to centralize those decisions in a format that also sits really close to the designs and the design teams themselves.
yeah. And speaking of like web development specifically, like it's still fairly recent that we got CSS properties. Like I think the first time I used them was 2017, maybe 2018. But like I can't remember when they first came into existence. But I feel like it kind of ties into when close to around the time design tokens might have come on the scene. I don't know if that's just coincidence or just throwing that out there. I don't know. It's just a feeling I have.
Well, design tokens kind of came out of um the way you think about scaling translations and localization, where you have named key value pairs. And so let's say you have a success message, you call it
Hmm.
success.message, and then in your database, you would have the text associated with this in French, English, Spanish, etc. Um,
Yeah.
Design tokens are kind of the same, and instead of using Ruby helpers, they're using at the time it was mostly Sass, and I don't know if you remember, but in Rails and Middleman and all these Ruby frameworks, you could name a file with many extensions, and then the asset pipeline would parse. So, for example, if you named .scss.erb first, it would
Yeah.
treat your file as an ERB file, and so then in there you could put some Ruby expressions, and then it would parse it as an SCSS. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is you could at the time import JSON or YAML use
Hmm.
in your CSS using this trick. And so this is how Gina, who coined the term with John Levine at Salesforce, started
Okay.
with, really. And so she had been doing this for years, and then at Salesforce coined the term.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I remember that because like when I used to work at Dev2, it's a Rails monolith, and I'll just drop Gina's Twitter. Because that was going to be one of my questions. I remember hearing somewhere that she invented the term, so I just want to thank you for calling that out. So give Gina a shout out. But yeah, I remember that totally in Rails land, and it's kind of nice. You can kind of pre-process it server side, and then you can just treat it like you said, like well, I guess in the case of SaaS, you're treating it twice during the build pipeline with the asset pipeline. But yeah, and I do remember what you were talking to about the like design tokens coming out of localization because I used to work on a large product at Autodesk for like film and like gaming, and we had translations like for like pretty much every language: Japanese, Korean, English, French, etc. And it was this whole thing about the obviously keys to find out what key it is in the localization. And one thing I found, I won't speak about it too much because it'll take too long to get into more, but like sometimes it was very confusing to know what the text was. Like if I was fixing a bug, I would have to find that text on the live web page or my development, and then I'd have to search the code to find the token associated to it. Then I'd find the token in the code, and then I'd be able to go fix whatever the bug was. So, anyways, sorry, little tangent there.
No,
Um,
I mean, this takes us to what you were asking about ASTs and debuggability. And so, first off, to touch on the ASTs, I think there's a future where we're going to have a design token object model, just like we have the document object model and the CSS object model.
mhm.
So I'm hoping to see that in the future. First, we need a few things to be in place, but I would love to see that happen. And then second, when it comes to debuggability, well, what if we had design token source maps, and
Okay, yeah,
being able
yeah,
to trace it all the way back to the database, and in your browser, being able to see where something came from. Because
yeah.
right
That
now,
would be super
if
helpful.
you if you put your big JSON structure into a token visualizer, which some people have been working on, you can get a lot of relationship mappings that are non-trivial uh, to build a mental model around. And so, if you're debugging, I think this is going to be a pretty
Yeah,
powerful next step.
yeah. No, it totally makes sense because like I've it's not the design system stuff, but debugging JavaScript where you're stepping through the Webpack build code instead of like the source map sometimes, and it's like you can get
Yeah.
your way around, but it get if you know what you're doing, but it's like it's just it's not as pleasant as going through with the source map. So
Yeah. But even the classic like error on line 200, it's like, nope, that's not it.
yeah,
or,
yeah,
or or error on line 20,590. It's like, oh no,
yeah,
My
that's
yeah,
not
favorite is
happening.
exactly.
error on line one.
Yeah, yeah,
Character
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
one nice long
20,000.
string. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, there it's the 2000th character in there. But yeah,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
So anyway, should we jump into some code and see what
Yeah,
happens? Because the goal of today was going to be to look at a real style dictionary project and what it would look like to convert some of it to Cobalt. Because I think we don't have
yeah,
time to convert the entire thing, but
yeah. Let's
um,
let's
uh,
let's get into it for sure.
so let me share a link to the design system, the token system we're going to try to convert right now. So
Okay, I'll pop that in the chat for people. And then if you want to share your VS Code link after, I'll open that up and
yep.
cool. Right.
Okay, so if you can look at this.
Okay, I'll copy that link. Ooh, I saw the storybook icon pop up already, so I knew what was about to happen here. Okay,
Okay,
so that's yeah.
so we're going to use the Netlify design token library. We have a color system that we call facets. and the facets color system is composed of multiple ramps. One is neutral ramp,
Okay.
one for light, one for dark, and then if you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see the teal that we all know and love at Netlify, and then we've got a few other ramps that we
Okay.
use throughout the code base. These at this time are so we're using Style Dictionary to manage those.
Okay.
And yeah, let me create any questions about the system before I show
No,
the source looks like.
I think I'm good. I guess the step here, that just means the number associated with the swatch.
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
that's right.
Cool.
So the way you would call those in your code is color facets green, and then let's say you want the middle value here, you would say color facets green 500.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
all these
Cool.
100, 200, blah, blah, that's the step.
Okay.
I have
And
a
we've done it in
unrelated
a way.
question.
Sorry, go ahead.
For your just displaying these in Storybook, is there like a library that you're using, or are these custom styles?
This comes with the storybooks doc blocks. I can show that
Oh,
actually
cool.
in a second. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the
let me share.
storybooks revamped a lot of things. The story component story format. It's like, I don't know how standard it is now. It's definitely standard for storybook, but they've made a lot of changes over the past couple of years for the good, I think.
Yeah, and
Okay.
they aim to support the design tokens format as well at some point. So I'd be excited
Okay.
for
Cool.
that. Um,
All right. This should open in a second. I'm assuming it's gonna open in web mode. Yeah, it is. Okay. All right. So we're in the matrix here. This is so we're on Kaelig's machine, and Kaelig's gonna kind of give us the tour of what's going on here. I'm just gonna give a bit of real estate and zoom in a bit so that people can see what's going on. Okay,
so we've
so you
done some
wanna?
homework before we joined this stream, and we converted a few things to look a bit like what. So okay, let's start with the beginning. I have a color.js file in which all of these colors are represented, the ones we just saw in Storybook.
Yeah.
Before we did our homework, these values were actually more like
Oh, okay.
it looked like this, okay? And there was no type equals color. So this by default was being not by default. This is being fed into Style Dictionary at the moment,
Okay.
and then it spits out. If I go to my sidebar here, I don't know if you can see what I'm showing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So here, go into the dist folder,
Okay.
and here you can see CSS, JS, JSON. And so if you look at the CSS version of it,
Yeah.
and go to colors.css, there we go.
Okay.
And so what Style Dictionary is doing here is that it's taking that color.js file, parsing it, and outputting it into all these formats. And this is what the output for CSS looks like.
Okay.
Now, we want to do the same thing with Cobalt instead. And so there's a couple changes. So let me just talk through them a little bit.
And I want to check my knowledge. With Style Dictionary, you have to have colors in an object that's named color, right?
Not necessarily. You can define the type of each token at the leaf level if you want.
Okay, so with Style Dictionary, the way it works is you have to, so color is the default, but if a color appears anywhere, you have to kind of identify, okay, this, when you say leaf, I'm guessing you have to like identify which path, like these are where all my color tokens are located in all my files. Is that how it works?
Not really. So here potentially, if you go back to my my screen, in Style
Yep.
Dictionary, you could do type equals color, and then next to it have big value 10 pixels and type equals size. So
Oh, okay.
you can mix and match in the same file. It just so happens that here, because I've got color, it makes it easy for Style Dictionary and for me to pass it in the config what to do
Okay.
with it. But you can totally mix and match.
Is it?
Make sense?
I'm assuming it's generally not recommended to mix and match. Like, uh,
I mean, if you had a component token file, you could want that. So let's say you have button.json. Let's see.
okay.
Button.json. I'm just going to make it up. But tokens for a button. Let's see what Copilot gives us.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. And then you could have... this is only outfitting colors. That's interesting.
It's
But
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
you could totally have a mix, and this is not the right format, by the way. But you could absolutely have a mix here of the sizes, the spacing, the padding, the background, the text size, etc.
Okay.
Transitions, whatever you want.
Cool.
So if the type doesn't appear, you can define that in your Style Dictionary config.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
So my config is a little bit custom, but essentially what you can do in Style Dictionary and is saying, hey, when you're going to transform CSS, these are the predefined transforms I want to use. When you're going to transform things to JS, these are the things.
Okay.
And then you can say, so for example, here, I'm telling it that the file path for all the
Oh, I
colors
see.
should be the color/color, and then to format that in CSS variables format.
Okay.
And then I think it infers because it starts with color. I think it I don't know exactly what the heuristics are, but it can infer a few things. Then
Yeah, because that's always just been like a confusing point for me. And again, reminder, I have not worked on like an advanced Style Dictionary setup. I've mostly just seen what other people do. And I'm just like, how do they tell these tokens apart? Because at least the design token format module, to less magic, like every token must have a type. It is invalid without a
yeah,
type. But you can
Mhm.
have, like you had earlier, you have the nice little cascade where you can set $ type color. And then now you've declared everything in here is now a color. I've manually declared a type, but I can also override this if I want to. Um,
yep,
at least in my token files, typography is a common one where like maybe I'll have a group called typography. By default, it is a typography token, and typography
Okay.
tokens have all of the font styles you could declare. Font family, font weight, font size, font style. All that stuff. But then like I might have some things inside where I'm like, okay, this is actually a font weight. It's in the typography group, but it's like I'm gonna have some manual overrides here where you're a weight, you're a size, you're a name.
yeah, we've got exactly the same thing here. So as you can tell, there's here typography, blah blah blah, all these,
Mm-hmm.
and then so those are text sizes, and then you've got the weights, letter spacing, and then the font stacks. But because all of these are named in, I actually don't know if the name matters here, to be honest, or if it's.
Okay.
But anyway, those are outputted as strings, and so this is fine. But if you started having token operations and needed some validation, etc., you would want something a bit more typed. But for the
Okay.
colors, what I know is that this at the top here is considered to be the category, and in Style Dictionary, there's this concept of a category, which I think Theo had as well in a way, and so that helps doing some inference around what the types of all of these things are going to be. Oops.
Okay. And
Cool. But what we want to do here is that we have this Style Dictionary format. So it's we've got that data, colors, the design systems is called facets.
mhm.
We've got that neutral ramp. And instead of value, if you remember well, the specification defined a dollar in front of all the kind of
Yeah,
keywords that
like you
are
had at the beginning.
spec, spec related. Um, so now that we have this color.js, I want to feed it into Cobalt. And so what would be the first step for me to do that, Drew?
Yeah, so I think I think Cobalt does want this in a JSON or YAML like static format.
Okay.
And that might be the easiest way to
Even
do
with the
it.
Node API, can we consume
could,
it with the Node API or?
Yeah, no, we could do the Node API. That'll let you pass in whatever. Yeah, it's just we might end up with some more manual steps in getting it into a file. So we can pick your own adventure here. we can do the CLI with JSON, or we can do the Node.js API with a JavaScript object.
Well, how about let me turn this thing off for now. I had some things, and then let me just run this and output it into JSON. No, I would not like to use to update Omazouche right now. Thank you.
The CLI will be much easier, just admittedly.
Wait.
Yeah.
Tokens color.js. And then I'm going to console log that. And I'm going to output it into a JSON file. Tokens color.tokens.json. And let's see. Uh-oh.
Oh yeah,
I forgot to
it's JSON stringify.
JSON stringify, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh god. Huh?
Okay, that should work.
Okay, cool. And we'll get pretty print. That's nice.
Ah, wonderful.
Okay, cool.
Here we go. So now we have a JSON file. What do we do?
Yeah, so let's install Cobalt into the project. Can be at the we have our design token package, so it can be at that level. That makes sense. So we're going to add it's the namespace package, so it's at Cobalt-UI.
So I think I'm going to put it
CLI.
In that package, in that workspace.
Okay. Yeah.
Add Cobalt. What is? Sorry, is it Cobalt?
It's a at symbol at Cobalt-UI. That's the namespace.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
/CLI
package.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll install that, and then we'll also want to install.
Oh wait, hang on.
We also want to install like the plugins we want to use, and the plugins are what file formats you want to output.
Okay.
Why can't I?
I thought it was Yarn add. I haven't used Yarn in a while, but maybe you have to do the add before the workspace. Yeah.
What is? Hang on. Let me open the docs for a second.
I'll get so it's saying add the dependency works rather than the workspace. It's
oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, you want it at the global package level by default, I guess.
Here we go.
Cool.
I swear I'm a professional web developer.
It's all good. When you're live coding and stuff, it's a different ball game. So people actually, when people are watching live streams, they actually appreciate the struggle when they see people, because like whenever you watch a YouTube, it's like clearly they made a ton of mistakes before the finished product, but you only see the finished product. Whereas when you're live, it's like, yeah, this is real life.
Yeah,
so I had to
still
build.
Don't want to let people know I can't code.
So I have a build script, and maybe I want to change it from style dictionary to something else?
Oh yeah. So with Cobalt CLI installed, you'll just run co build, just the abbreviation,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then it'll just look for a config file, which we'll make.
Okay.
So by default, it'll look for a tokens.config.js file, which I think this is like a common JS package, right? So yeah, I think you're still
Let's see.
using the
Yeah,
common
you're right.
JS node. So I think you might want to do .mjs. It might like that better.
Oh, okay. Get ESM in there.
Cool.
Yeah, gotta represent. And so we're gonna export default, and then we're going to
Do we have
wanna
types?
Yeah, there's there are types that are exported. There are if you go to the Cobalt documentation, there's like a copy paste for the
Okay, cool.
starter
Okay.
config. And then we'll want to install the plugins we want to use. So maybe CSS and JavaScript to start.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll
Cool.
just you'll import the plugins. Like you can import actually, if you can pull up the Cobalt documentation, let me zoom in. Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then same for CSS.
So the first step is to point to the tokens. So I'm going to point to my color tokens. Tokens, color tokens.json.
So yeah, you can point to one file, or you can give it an array for multiple files. Either works.
Nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it doesn't. It'll just basically flatten them into one file. So you'll have to deal with like conflicts if there are any, but it'll still let you like break up your file into multiple. It'll just kind of treat it as if it's one file.
Okay, so if you have duplicates in there,
be...
it'll override like the last file, or is it just ends up with duplicates in it?
No, because it'll kind of flatten them into that structure. So it's like if you had color.blue. Whatever in 3 files, then I think it's a flip of the coin what would actually take.
Okay.
It's one of those deals. I think it actually throws. I think it'll succeed, but it'll throw a warning like, hey, there's some duplicates here. But you can still break it up into multiple files, which I would argue is a good strategy in general, because that way you can, like, your file will actually tell you. It's just more simple, because the idea is to have global IDs for all of your tokens. That way it's just simpler to reference. So generally a good idea to think of your tokens in like a global ID sense.
Okay.
And so tell us about the plugin system and what comes next.
Oh yeah. So for plugins, we'll just pass in an array, plugins : and then an array, and then plugin.js is did it exactly. So you can output as many plugins as you want. So we're using JavaScript. We might also want the CSS plugin too. Works the same way. And then you can refer to each plugin's documentation on what it on some options that it has. So like for
do I want to run this first for the CSS?
Yes.
Or Yarn?
Yeah. We'll want to add the CSS plugin and then import it the same way.
Okay.
The JS plugin handles JS and JSON, and I think by default, because they used to be separate plugins. Then I realized, like, wait a second, the JS and JSON stands for JS. It should just be the same plugin. So you can output JavaScript or JSON, and the JavaScript outputs comes typed, so it has type definitions, which I think you can opt out of, but it's a nice little, like, when we're saying JavaScript, we're saying TypeScript, but if you're not using TypeScript, then the types are just ignored and it's just JavaScript.
Okay.
So no special magic or opt-in. It's just the types are there if you need them, and they're just ignored if you don't. So I think this works. I think by default. Okay.
Auto format, because it's screwing with.
Okay. So yeah, if we so now the test of truth, if we just run co-build, hopefully we'll see something,
Yeah,
Okay.
or run your build script.
I'm gonna light a candle to make sure it passes. Okay. What's it talking about? There's a couple errors, I think. Okay. Command failed.
I'm
Oh,
not sure what's going on,
it's
but I should still have something. Let's see.
okay. Yeah,
Look at
it's
that.
complaining about
Tokens.css.
prettier, which is
Did it?
nice.
Wait, did it output that? Okay, cool. And so by default, it also does some nice things where the CSS plugin also exports display P3 for supported monitors, so it automatically up converts to HDR colors.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's
and
crazy.
it'll by default it'll format in just like normal hex, but you can also control that. You can control that like if you're using the fancy new OKLCH, which I'm a huge fan
Okay,
of.
yeah.
You can there's like some docs on how to opt into that, but by default, like it's one of those by default, if there's no options, no settings, I'm just going to assume you're not an OKLCH super fan, so we're just going to stick with normal hex. um
Okay.
and yeah, so the JSON that it outputs is a little more complicated. I forget if you open up a JS or a JSON, they're really similar. um, so
Okay.
yeah, for the
Okay.
JS file, it basically outputs a map of, you can see it flattened everything into that global ID, so it'll match
Okay.
exactly what you have in your JSON, so there's no surprises. And then in JavaScript, there is a token function which is type checked, and so the token function, it'll just take in an ID, and then
Okay.
it'll print out the value. And because it's type checked, if you mistype one of your token IDs, then it'll throw a TypeScript error saying, "Hey, that's not one of your tokens."
No, that's
There's
definitely
also
nice
some
because
some bonus stuff where Cobalt has this idea of modes, as in like light mode, dark mode. But it's not limited to colors. It can be limited to anything. Like you could even have like desktop mode, mobile mode for sizing and breakpoints. Um, you could have user text size mode, like increased text size. You could have reduced motion mode for accessibility purposes.
okay.
So Cobalt has this idea of mode, and you basically can apply modifiers to every token. And in the JavaScript function, you can also optionally pass in your mode. So if you had like a color, you could do token, and the second parameter would be like light, meaning like I want this color, give me the light mode version of this color. Um, that's optional if you've declared it in your JSON. Obviously, it doesn't know what that is if you haven't told it.
Okay. So out of the box, it gives you a pretty good default experience, but you can definitely build off it if you want to.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so in the token function, which is just the function called token, takes one parameter, it's a string. That's how you consume it in JavaScript. And then there's also a Sass plugin, and the Sass plugin works the exact same way. It gives you a token function. It's also type checked in Sass, so it'll throw an error. And the Sass plugin also gives you two flavors where you can either just get the raw value if you have some fancy like Sass modifiers you want to do, or you can use the Sass plugin basically just as like a wrapper around the CSS plugin where you're still using CSS variables. Sass just type checks them, so you get that like error throwing if you accidentally make a typo in your CSS variables, which is, at least for me, the number one pain point with using CSS variables is I always make typos in them.
Okay. I had a quick question. So, I mean, we're using some plugins that ship with Cobalt right now, but is it is there docs on how to create like userland plugins right now, or is that something on the roadmap?
Uh, yeah. Yeah, I can post it into the Twitch chat. Yeah, there's a plugin API.
Okay.
So it takes a lot of ideas, like you mentioned earlier, like the tools that come before it. It's like everything is just standing on the shoulders of giants. So this uses a very, really similar, intentionally similar API to Rollup or Vite, which, in my
Okay.
opinion, like plugins can be scary, especially if you've never taken the dive. But if you have like basic JavaScript knowledge, like uh, making plugins for Rollup or Vite can be really friendly and really intuitive once you dive in. They're a lot more accessible than people might think.
Okay.
Even if you don't know what AST stands for, that's okay. Like you can probably figure it out, as you kind of dive in. And then Cobalt plugins are designed with the exact same API as Rollup or Vite. It's just simpler
Okay.
because Rollup and Vite are dealing with like every possible file format you could possibly use for the web,
Yeah.
and also how all those file formats interact with one another. And so you're dealing with really complex stuff in bundler land. Cobalt, fortunately, like you're dealing with a very known singular input, which is a design token file. So
Okay.
we can simplify that by a great deal. But it uses
Okay.
a lot of the same patterns and config and naming and that sort of stuff. So if you've written a plugin for Rollup or Vite, then this should feel right at home and like in the exact same style, pretty much.
Okay.
Should we dive into Tailwind?
Yeah, I saw there was a Tailwind plugin, so
Yeah. Okay. So
I'll share that in the chat. The Tailwind plugin.
let me add the Tailwind plugin.
Yeah. So yeah, how the Tailwind plugin works is it builds off of Tailwind themes, where you can basically start off with extending this auto-generated Cobalt theme. So it'll take
Okay.
your design tokens and it'll do its best job at translating that into a Tailwind theme. And you just kind of import it in your Tailwind config. And you can still add all of your other extensions and overrides and everything. And
Okay.
you can build off that. It just kind of saves you the work of like, let's just say you have a design, a giant tokens.json of all your values. It doesn't make you double type. It just auto generates your Tailwind theme. So you can start from
Okay.
there, and then now I can just reference the tokens that are already in my design docs or storybook, like Kaelig has, and I can just start from that base and I can just extend it from there.
Okay.
Oh,
That's
you
So
know what?
here,
I already have my Tailwind config, so I don't need that plugin. What I want is the Kulori. I want to output CSS that is of a specific format, so that my Tailwind config can use it. So
oh,
I'm gonna do that.
right. Yeah.
So
Do you
from
Yeah.
generate like
directly from the
dash
docs.
TW properties or what?
Yeah, he's referring to yeah, there's a yeah, using CSS variables. Sorry. Yeah, exactly what
Okay.
you just
Yeah.
said. Just that section in the Tailwind docs.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, so what we're doing here is that we're gonna output two. Wait, can I do that? Output two different CSS.
Yeah, you can choose
Uh,
one of the options I think is file name, and then you can
yeah.
choose where that gets generated to.
Okay,
Um,
great. So
that outdir in .dist that just basically deduplicates it, and so it'll just go from outdir. A
great.
little hack is you can even do like 2 dots, and you can even go above that if you want. That's just like your starting point with file name.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna show what this is gonna output. So let's run the build.
I think.
Here we go. And then I have this special format now, which is that
Okay.
instead of having colors in hex like here, I have them in RGB. And so I can use them as RGB.
Oh, you did something cool that I've actually never done before, is loading the same plugin twice to generate different outputs with different options.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never thought about doing that, but that is definitely a thing you can do. That is definitely something I plan for people doing, and I'm not surprised at all that it worked the first time.
I just learned something
That's great.
today too. I didn't realize you could put the RGB values like that because normally they're like comma delimited when you have it in the RGB, but I didn't realize you could do with the CSS property like that and then just pop
Right.
them.
Well, so the reason why I want to have them like this, and it's because if you want to apply opacity to this, color,
Yeah.
facets, blue, blah blah blah, and then like how do you do that? You can't because you have an X value.
Yeah.
But with this, you can totally do that. You can use that pass it to the RGB function, and then put the amount of opacity you want. You're kind of free here to do 0.5 or 50%. You can kind of do what you want. And that's why, that's how Tailwind applies opacity. So when you pass to the Tailwind config any color, if you have that RGB version of it, and so in
Yeah.
this case, it's not we don't have the right format because in Style Dictionary it was slightly different. But what you can tell it is, I want to have that RGB value, and then Tailwind is automatically going to apply the alpha value when you do something like div class name equal. Oh, I'm just going to write normal CSS. TW BG teal darkest. So here it's going to be a normal teal darkest background. But if you do /50, it's going to apply 50% opacity to it. And it can only do that thanks to this notation.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. No.
So it's a
I knew
cool
you
trick.
could apply it like. Yeah. I just didn't realize you could have the RGB values not being comma separated. So that's I learned something today. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a newer notation, but it's supported by most browsers out there, so I think it's pretty safe to use.
Cool.
So now I need all of my color. Okay, so I'm just gonna.
Yeah, actually, if we could back up real quick to what you did in the config file, because I think you copy pasted it, but that's also something that's probably worth calling out.
Let me fix that real quick. Oh wait, no, that's not. This is fine. Okay, and what is not fine is, so here I have a mapping in my SAS. In my CSS file. So that's one of the mappings I was talking about earlier on. So if I, okay, so it's going to be dist color.rgb.css. So I'm taking those values and then calling them here. This is not the right name here, but so I'll have to replace this. And then I have a dark version for each mapping as well. And then this is what is being used in Tailwind. So it's a bit of mapping, if you take it. That's why we need CSS, token source maps.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, sorry. Okay, so let me go back to the config file and show real quick what happens.
Yeah, so the first plugin CSS was just default, and you saw that it just generated hex colors. And then for the second one, you passed in some options, and one of them is we have the transform here.
Yeah.
And then that's also kind of we are getting into transforms a little bit, but the difference being they're kind of opt-in. And this is where Kaelig decided, I don't want a hex value. I actually want this to output a different format. And transform, it'll loop through every token in your system. And you can see here, we can actually just pass in nothing and just say, we actually want to change how colors are generated. But for every other token type, borders, gradients, cubic Beziers for animation, typography tokens, all the different tokens you can think of. You can say for everything else, we're good, just like accept default, right? But if it's color, we're going to override that, and we're going to reformat this color. And then the snippet there is just like a little color parser that just kind of takes a hex and then remaps it into the values that we showed. But you can run any kind of code that you want there, and it'll just accept it. So it's a nice kind of things just work by default, with the idea being the default is probably what you want most of the time, but you have an escape hatch for overriding when you need it. Or in Kaelig's case, we have an existing Tailwind setup that works this certain way, so we need this override. But just for color tokens, everything else we're good.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. And again, getting back to the by default out of the box, you get a pretty good experience. But again, you can always tap in and do what you need to do if you have to. So,
and I think comparing it to Style Dictionary, which is the name of this, it's kind of a different model of Style Dictionary. Kind of, you set up transform chains of do A then B then C then D, and you kind of set
Okay.
up that that chain of, okay, every token's going to run through this. Whereas Cobalt, and maybe this is a dumb idea, but just as an experiment, like what if there wasn't really a chain? What if there's just like one step? You have your tokens, you have your
Yeah.
plugins, and then you have your output. And so, will that be enough? Maybe, maybe not. But the goal is to like reduce that complexity there in the number of ways that you
Yeah.
can combine things. And just
Cool.
try and
Yeah.
separate, like, this is your CSS output. This is how you're thinking about CSS. You can control how that CSS generates, and then just thinking about another output specific format. Same for JavaScript. You might want your
Yeah.
colors in, like, say you want your colors, like I mentioned earlier, OK LCH format, fancy new color format that all browsers support now. Maybe, okay, we want OK LCH and CSS, but we just want standard hex and JavaScript because we're doing some like color manipulation, we're doing some WebGL stuff. We want those in two different formats, and it's thinking about like even what Kaelig said at the beginning, like all the different build targets. Like we have our refrigerator plugin, so we can output the right refrigerator code.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
instead of thinking of this complex, like, okay, I have to deal with this complex chain and think about all the outputs. It's just, okay, let's just think about the outputs individually and the decisions that need to change according to that output.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. And what was I going to say? I just wanted to do a time check. I'm good to still go a bit longer if both of you want to, but I just want to be mindful of both of your times as well. We're scheduled for 3 more minutes, but I'm happy to keep going for a while if you both want to. I leave it up to you. So.
Well, I just want to look at the Tailwind version of it, because I think if I go to
And
this
yeah, I'm
example
good
here.
for a little bit longer. Like if we just want to,
Okay.
yeah, whatever Kaelig's thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I think I should be able to share my local host. Oh, yes, it worked. Okay, so
Okay. Yeah.
forward a port.
Where's your local
1,
host?
2, 3,
Oh yeah.
4.
Okay. Yeah.
Allow.
Where's the link?
Hang on, give me a second. It's still asking
Oh
me
yeah.
to
Yeah.
do some port
No worries.
forwarding authorization stuff.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool feature, to be honest. The port forwarding. It's
Okay, I think I made it public, so
yeah. There should be. I don't know if I can see it in here.
give you
No, I can't see
this.
the
Here
port
we go.
forwarding. Okay, cool. I'll copy that. Let's just open that up. Okay. Yes, I am okay to continue to this page.
I swear it's safe. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
look at that.
Thought you were,
It
I thought you
works.
were gonna I thought you were gonna rickroll me.
That was
Okay, so
tempting,
this
but
is
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this is awesome anyway.
So yeah, I'm very happy about this. So if you go back to the tokens, yeah, okay. So I looked into the docs while you were talking about random stuff. Not random stuff, but you were talking about important things. And what I wanted is to take the so the format of tokens I had before was camel case and not
Okay.
kebab case. And so I wanted to reuse that exact same naming convention. And so I looked at the docs, and it was super simple to figure out what generate name did in that CSS plugin. And so I could
Okay.
simply go ahead and change that. One thing that is nice about Style Dictionary is that it comes by default with a few predefined ways of parsing and transforming names, etc. But in this very case, it's extremely simple as well. So anyway, I
Okay.
wanted to distinguish. So first off, I wanted to have camel case. Then for some reason there was an underscore between the last number and the name of the color. And so I replaced that underscore. And then I wanted to distinguish the normal color variables with another prefix. And so I replaced the prefix from, I mean, it should really be this, but
Okay.
something like this. And replace it with color RGB so that if I import both files, which I sometimes have done, so if I look at those colors, I don't want those to have the exact same name as these ones. Also, these ones I haven't
Okay.
transformed them, but so here you can see the prefix is color, and these ones I wanted to have color RGB.
Okay.
And
Just
then
to
I simply
differentiate.
import them into my CSS in the root as these are the default mappings. And then if you're in dark mode, these are the other mappings. And then in the Tailwind config, we end up with references to these colors plus the alpha value modifier.
Okay.
And then this means that in my files, let's say I've got CWBG reg light test. If I want to apply 50% opacity on it, I do /50, and here we go.
Okay.
So that's it. That's we transformed all of the color system and from one format to another. And kudos to you, Drew, because that was
That
super
seemed pretty
smooth, very
painless.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Because I was gonna ask you, like, I was like, is that all you need to do? But clearly, it sounds like it is. So, no, that's super cool.
Kudos to you for working on the DTFM format that made this possible. So in your experience, Kaelig, with this, why would people want to use Cobalt, or like what did you get out of it? Was this pretty much a like kind of neutral, no advantages, or is this um like if we wanted to opt into the design token format module at Netlify, would you have to invest more time in Style Dictionary like as it exists today to get it to work properly?
Hmm. So we only looked at colors, and
Hmm.
there's other things in our system like opacity and shadows, etc. And so there's some kind of gnarly things I've been doing with shadows to do some token references and all that I think the specification doesn't support by default. So we'd have to find some sort of workarounds. And I don't know what this would look like if we started to scale beyond colors. Um, so I'm not sure we're gonna switch right now, but it's definitely interesting to like when we were talking about it prior to the stream, talking about shadows specifically. It gave me a sense of the kind of holes we might have in the specification.
Okay.
Um, and so that it's not the tool, it's the spec at this point. But likewise, there are things that Style Dictionary doesn't do by default, and that I had to find workarounds to make
Yeah.
it computer do the thing kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no tool is perfect. There's trade-offs on both sides. That said, with tools like Figma and tools like XD and Zeppelin, Sketch, etc., adopting the design token specification, I think that if somebody wants to have a smoother experience working across these and defining um, their source of truth for tokens without necessarily having to pay for a platform that does it for you, and you want to use open source tools, I think Cobalt is a great way to go. And another suite of tools that I want to bring up is the Knapsack folks. They've been
Okay.
super nice sharing, open sourcing what they've built. And so that's what they use internally to build their design token management system
Okay.
in their product. And so I've just shared the link.
Oh, I think I found it.
There.
Knapsack.cloud.
Yeah, and Upside.cloud is the where people can learn about it. But I also want to bring up to people's attention
Okay.
the suite of tools they've been building. So it's like
Okay.
parsers,
Yeah.
validators, and transformers for the specification.
Cool.
Um, and the documentation is a little bit sparse just for now, but it's getting there.
Cool, cool. I have another question. Would would it be feasible for you right now, Kaelig, to leverage Cobalt for certain things, but still stay locked into Style Dictionary for some other stuff? Given you said like the
Mm.
spec's not quite there yet, or does it just make more sense for you to just wait it out a bit more and then hopefully come to Cobalt if it fits the bill for all the other things you need?
Well, we don't have a dedicated design system team. So I try to avoid using cutting edge stuff or multiple libraries in the same repo. It's
Mhm.
just like a kind of an engineering principle of if we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
too
yeah,
many things to learn, and I would be
yeah,
probably the only one to know Cobalt and in the team, so that wouldn't make sense.
yeah,
And
yeah,
Style Dictionary has a huge community. People already know it internally. It's easy to Google for if you have a problem. Somebody probably had it before you, and so those kind of advantages over emerging tools is not negligible. And it
yeah,
it
yeah, for
works the
sure.
way it is right now. So the business value of us switching right now be close to zero. But as soon as we got more of the ecosystem switching to the design token format module, um, unless Style Dictionary adopts it, I
Okay,
think there's going to be a good reason to move. Yeah.
okay. Okay, yeah. I think I misunderstood one part at when we talked initially. I thought there was something in Style Dictionary that was missing for you, which is why you were investing in it. But it's more the case of hopefully that W3 spec comes into play and supports all the things you need at some point, and then it might make more sense to move to Cobalt potentially after.
Yeah. And I would say
Okay.
if I was starting a completely new design token thing today, uh, like 3 years ago, I would have used Theo because that's a project I worked on when I was at Salesforce. Then,
Okay.
when I joined Netlify, we were using Style Dictionary. I've been installing it on a few other code bases, and it's worked great. But then, if I was starting something completely new, I think I would give Cobalt a very good look before I jump into Style Dictionary as the default.
Okay. Gotcha. Cool. 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 Well, it's been super informative for me, and uh, thank you for sharing both your experiences and talking about the tools. I'm a big fan of open source. I work in open source, so it's always cool to see open source stuff. Um, before we wrap it up here, anything else you want to leave? I don't have to pressure you to say like leave some words of wisdom, but if you have anything you want to say before we wrap up, yeah, I guess speak now or forever hold your peace.
Uh, one cool thing that Kaelig said was, yeah, because we had talked about shadows last week, in the specification, and just the circular nature of like specifications and tooling of like you can come up with a specification, but then you need tooling to use it. But then after you use the
Hmm.
tooling, you realize, oh, the specification might have some gaps, and there's this really cool feedback loop that happens. And right now, that
Yeah.
like the goal is not to get everyone to switch off Style Dictionary. Like Style Dictionary works for you, keep using Style Dictionary. Like Kaelig said, there's a huge community. There's lots of prior art. There's lots of examples. Um, Style Dictionary is great, and
Hmm.
nothing Cobalt wouldn't exist. The design token format module wouldn't exist without Style Dictionary. Like it can't be understated, like how pivotal and important Style Dictionary has been in the formulation of design tokens. Um, and Cobalt is just right now is in the process of just trying to complete that specification loop of just
Okay.
here's the specification as it exists. Now, does this work? Can we actually build stuff with it? Like I've used it in production in two companies, and you can build
Okay.
a design system, but the spec's still evolving, the spec's still improving. So yeah, if you're interested in joining the bleeding edge, you can try it. But there's also a lot of thrashing that might not be worth it for some people in some orgs, and that's cool too. But
Yeah.
just completing the
Yeah.
feedback loop is the point.
Cool. Cool. Awesome. Well, I know we went a bit over time, but I'm glad we were able to actually get the proof of concept working, and we saw a live page with some beautiful colors, swatches. So Yeah, thanks everybody. And if you both don't mind just staying on for a second, also coming up Friday, I have a non-traditional stream. I'm from Montreal. I've been speaking French since I've been in elementary school, and doing a fun stream chatting open source with somebody from France on Friday, and it'll be in French. So, just mixing things up, and I thought it'd be fun. So check that out. And we've got all kinds of other great guests coming on. Saran from Code Newbies joining me in a few weeks. We're going to be talking about her new company, notadesigner.io and stuff. So looking forward to all that stuff. And yeah, we'll see you all Friday. And yeah, if you both just don't mind staying on for 1 second. Later, everybody.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Thank you so
Bye.
much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah.